The rancher took her in without questions, until she whispered the one name he never expected to hear. The ranch sat far from the nearest town, resting in a wide stretch of open land where the sky felt bigger than anywhere else in the world. The wind moved softly through the tall grass, carrying the smell of earth and cattle, and the sun slowly dipped behind the hills in the distance. It was the kind of place where silence felt normal, where days passed in a steady rhythm of work and rest. For the rancher, this quiet life was exactly what he wanted. He had chosen this land years ago to be away from people and noise. Out here, his mornings began before sunrise, and his evenings ended with the soft sounds of crickets and the gentle lowing of cows. His world was simple: feed the animals, fix the fences, cook his meals, sleep when the day was done. He didn't need much more than that. That evening he was walking along the fence line, checking for loose wires or broken posts, when he noticed something that didn't belong. At first he thought it was a shadow or maybe a deer standing still. But as he stepped closer, the shape moved. It was a woman. She stood just beyond the gate, her hands gripping the wooden rail like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her clothes were dusty and worn, and her hair was tied back in a messy knot that looked like it had been done in a hurry. A small backpack hung from one shoulder, and her boots were covered in dirt. She looked tired in a way that went deeper than just missing sleep. Her eyes, when they met his, held something heavy, fear, maybe, or worry that had been sitting in her chest for a long time. The rancher stopped a few steps away, unsure what to say at first. People didn't just show up at his place. The road that led here was long and rough, and most folks in town barely remembered the ranch even existed. "Are you lost?" he finally asked, keeping his voice calm. The woman swallowed and shook her head slightly. "No," she said. Her voice was quiet, like she hadn't used it much that day. I need a place to sit for a while." He studied her for a moment. She didn't look dangerous. She didn't look like someone looking for trouble. She looked like someone who had been walking for a long time with nowhere to go. He opened the gate and stepped aside. "You can come in," he said simply. Relief crossed her face so quickly that it almost hurt to see. She nodded and stepped onto the ranch land, her legs moving slowly, like they might give out at any moment. He led her toward the house, a small wooden building that had seen better days but still stood strong against the wind and weather. Inside, the house was warm and smelled like coffee and wood. He pulled out a chair and set it near the table. "Sit," he said. "I'll get you some water." She sat down carefully, placing her backpack at her feet and keeping one hand on it like she didn't want it out of reach. He handed her a glass of water, and she drank it in slow, steady sips as if she was afraid to drink too fast. "You hungry?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded. He warmed up some food on the stove, nothing fancy, just something hot and filling. When he set the plate in front of her, she stared at it for a moment before taking the first bite. The way she ate told him she hadn't had a proper meal in a while. They sat in silence for a bit. The rancher didn't push her to talk. He had learned over the years that people spoke when they were ready, not when they were asked. After a while, she finally said, "Thank you." He nodded. "You're welcome." Outside, the sky grew darker, stars starting to appear one by one. The house felt smaller in the quiet, but not in a bad way. The woman finished her food and leaned back in her chair, looking around like she was trying to take in every detail. "You can stay the night," he said. "There's a spare room. It's nothing special, but it's warm." Her eyes widened. "You don't even know my name," he shrugged. "Doesn't matter, everyone needs a place to sleep." She looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers together. "My name is Lily," she said softly. He nodded. "All right, Lily." He showed her to the spare room, a small space with a bed, a blanket, and a window that looked out over the open land. She stood in the doorway for a moment, like she couldn't believe it was real. "Good night," he said. "Good night," she replied. As he went back to his own room, he found it hard to sleep. His mind kept going back to the way she had looked at the gate, like she had reached the end of something long and hard. He wondered where she had come from. He wondered why she had chosen this place of all places to stop. The night passed slowly. In the morning, the smell of coffee filled the house again. Lily came out of the room, looking cleaner and a little more rested, but the tiredness in her eyes was still there. She offered to help with breakfast, and when he handed her a knife to cut bread, she did it carefully, like she wanted to prove she wasn't just someone passing through. After they ate, he went outside to start his chores. To his surprise, Lily followed him. "Can I help?" she asked. He handed her a bucket of feed. "Sure." She walked beside him as he showed her how to scatter food for the animals. She listened closely, asking small questions, nodding as if every detail mattered. The animals seemed to relax around her, and he noticed the way she smiled when a calf brushed against her leg. As the day went on, she stayed busy, sweeping the porch, carrying small tools, doing whatever she could find to do. But every now and then, she would pause and look down the road, her shoulders tensing like she expected someone to appear. He noticed, but he didn't say anything. That evening, as the sun dipped low again, they sat on the porch, watching the sky turn orange and pink. The air was calm, and for a moment everything felt peaceful. Lily hugged her backpack to her chest. "You didn't have to help me," she said. "Most people wouldn't." He looked out at the land, then back at her. "Sometimes you don't need a reason." She nodded, but her eyes filled with something that looked like both relief and sadness. He had a feeling this wasn't just a simple stop on her journey. There was a story behind her silence, behind the way she held onto that bag, behind the way she flinched at distant sounds. And though he didn't know it yet, her story was about to become part of his own. The next morning began quietly, just like the one before. The rancher woke before the sun, as he always did, and stepped outside to breathe in the cool air. The sky was still pale, and the land stretched wide and empty, peaceful in a way that made him feel steady inside. For a moment, he almost forgot that he wasn't alone anymore. Then he heard footsteps behind him. Lily stood in the doorway, pulling her jacket tighter around her shoulders. Her hair was still a little messy from sleep, and she looked unsure, like she didn't want to step into the day without knowing where she stood. "Morning," she said softly. "Morning," he replied. She hesitated, then asked, "What should I do?" He looked at her for a moment. Most people who passed through didn't ask that. They took what they needed and moved on, but Lily seemed different. She wanted to belong, even if only for a little while. "You can help me with the animals," he said, "if you want." Her face brightened just a little. "I want to." They walked across the land together, the grass brushing against their boots. He showed her how to fill the water troughs and how to make sure the gates were closed properly. She listened carefully, nodding at every step, like she didn't want to miss a single detail. As they worked, he noticed how she moved. She was careful but quick, like someone who had learned to stay alert. Every sound made her glance around, every distant noise made her pause. She didn't say anything about it, but her body did. By midday, the sun was high and the heat pressed down on them. They sat under the shade of a tree, sharing a bottle of water. Lily stared out at the open land, her eyes following the line of the fence far into the distance. "It's so quiet here," she said. "That's the best part," he replied. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "It must be nice, not having to look over your shoulder all the time." He didn't ask what she meant. He just nodded. Over the next few days, a new routine began to form. Lily stayed. She woke up early, worked beside him, and helped with small things around the house. She cleaned, cooked, and even tried fixing a broken chair, though it ended up wobbling more than before. They both laughed about it, and for a moment the heavy feeling around her seemed to lift. But even as she settled in, the signs of her past stayed close. She never used the phone. When he offered it to her one evening, she shook her head quickly. "I don't need it," she said, a little too fast. She kept her backpack near her at all times. When she slept, it sat by her bed. When she worked outside, she left it on the porch where she could see it through the window. And sometimes, in the quiet moments, he caught her staring into space, her face pale, her hands clenched like she was holding onto something invisible. One afternoon, a truck drove past on the distant road, raising a cloud of dust. Lily froze. Her body went stiff and her eyes locked onto the sound. She didn't move until the noise faded away. "You okay?" he asked gently. She nodded, but her voice shook. "Yeah." "Just surprised me." He knew that wasn't the whole truth. That night they sat at the small table in the kitchen, eating dinner. The light above them flickered softly. The house felt warm, safe. Lily poked at her food, not really eating. "You don't have to stay," he said after a while. "I mean, you can stay as long as you want, but you don't owe me anything." She looked up at him, her eyes wide. "I know, I don't really have anywhere else." The words hung in the air between them. "Everyone needs a place," he said. She nodded, and this time her eyes filled with tears she tried to hide by looking down. Later, as they cleaned up, she accidentally dropped a plate. It shattered on the floor. The sound was sharp and loud in the small room. Lily jumped back, her hands raised like she was bracing for something. "Hey," he said quickly. "It's okay, it's just a plate." She stood there, breathing hard, her face pale. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He handed her a broom. "No harm done." But he couldn't forget the look in her eyes. It wasn't the look of someone worried about a broken plate. It was the look of someone who had learned to expect something worse. That night, he sat on the porch alone, watching the stars. His mind drifted back to his own past, to the life he had left behind when he chose this quiet place. He had come here to forget things, to leave old memories far away. Now, Lily had brought a new kind of memory into his world, a mystery he couldn't ignore. The next day, he decided to take her into town to get some supplies. She hesitated when he told her. "Do I have to go?" she asked. "You can stay here if you want," he said. "I just thought you might need some things." She thought about it for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay. I'll go." The drive was quiet. Lily stared out the window, her foot tapping nervously on the floor. When they reached town, she stayed close to him like she didn't want to get lost or seen. Inside the small store, people nodded at the rancher. A few glanced at Lily with curiosity, but no one said anything. Lily kept her head down, her hand gripping the strap of her backpack. As they checked out, the cashier smiled. "Didn't know you had company these days," he shrugged. "Just helping someone out." Lily didn't say a word. On the drive back, she let out a long breath like she had been holding it in the whole time. "I don't like being around a lot of people," she admitted. "I figured," he said. That evening, as they sat by a small fire outside, the sky dark and full of stars, Lily finally spoke again. "Why do you live out here?" she asked. He stared into the flames. "I wanted things to be simple," she nodded. "I think I wanted the same thing. I just didn't know where to find it." They sat in silence, the fire crackling softly between them. As the days passed, trust began to grow, slow and careful. Lily laughed more. She started telling small stories about places she had been, things she liked, little pieces of herself that didn't feel dangerous to share. But there were still parts she kept locked away. One night, he woke up to the sound of her crying softly in the spare room. He stood outside the door, unsure what to do. He didn't knock. He didn't speak. He just stood there, listening, wishing he could take whatever pain was chasing her even in her sleep. In the morning, she acted like nothing had happened. But he knew. And deep down, he felt that whatever she was running from hadn't stopped running. It was only a matter of time before it caught up to both of them. The evening air felt different that day. The wind was softer, slower, like it was carrying something unseen across the open land. The rancher noticed it as he closed the barn doors and walked back toward the house. The sky was painted in deep shades of purple and orange, and the first stars were beginning to appear. Lily was sitting on the porch steps, hugging her backpack close to her chest like she always did. She wasn't looking at the sky this time. She was staring at the ground, drawing small lines in the dirt with a stick. "You okay?" he asked. She looked up, startled, like she hadn't heard him walk up. "Yeah," she said quickly. I think so." He could tell she wasn't telling the full truth, but he didn't push. Instead, he sat down a few steps away from her. The porch creaked softly under his weight. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The quiet between them felt heavy, not uncomfortable, but full of something waiting to be said. "I made stew," he said. "It'll be ready in a bit." She nodded, but didn't move. He studied her face in the fading light. She looked tired again, more than usual, like she hadn't slept much the night before. Her hands were shaking just a little as she dropped the stick and wrapped her arms around herself. "Lily," he said gently, "you don't have to talk if you don't want to. But you don't have to carry everything alone either." She swallowed hard. Her eyes filled, and she quickly wiped them with the back of her hand like she didn't want him to see. "I don't even know where to start," she whispered. "Anywhere is fine," he replied. She took a long breath, then another. The words came slowly at first, like she was testing each one before letting it go. "I didn't plan to come here," she said. "I was just walking. I didn't really care where I ended up." He nodded, listening. "I left a place where everything felt too loud, too crowded, too close." She paused, searching for the right word. "I felt like I couldn't breathe anymore." He could hear the truth in her voice, not just in the words, but in the way she said them. "I walked for days," she continued. "Took rides when I could, slept where I could. I kept thinking if I just went far enough, I'd find somewhere quiet, somewhere safe." Her eyes lifted and met his. "And then I saw your gate." He felt something shift inside him. He hadn't thought much about that moment, opening the gate, letting her in. He had just done what felt right. Now, hearing her talk about it like it was something bigger, something meaningful, made his chest feel tight. They went inside to eat, but Lily barely touched her food. After a few bites, she pushed the bowl away and stared into the steam rising from it. "There's something I haven't told you," she said. He leaned back in his chair, giving her space. "I didn't just leave because things were loud," she said. "I left because I was scared." He didn't interrupt. "There was someone," she continued. "Someone who wanted me to stay in a life I didn't choose. I tried to be strong, I tried to make it work, but every day I felt smaller." Her hands curled into fists in her lap. "I don't want to go back to that," she said. "I can't." The rancher nodded slowly. He understood more than she knew. He had left his own life behind for reasons he didn't like to talk about. Different story, same feeling. "You don't have to," he said simply. She looked up at him, surprised. "You don't even know what I did," she said. He shrugged. "I know what it's like to need a fresh start. That's enough." They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. Then Lily took a breath that seemed to come from deep inside her. "There's a name," she said, "a name I've been afraid to say out loud." He looked at her, his heart picking up speed without him knowing why. "I heard you say it once," she went on. "When you were talking in your sleep, I didn't mean to listen, but I did." His body went still. "You said the name like it mattered, like it hurt." His hands tightened around the edge of the table. "What name?" he asked, even though something inside him already knew. She hesitated. Her eyes searched his face like she was trying to decide if it was safe. "Daniel," she whispered. The world seemed to stop. The rancher's breath caught in his throat. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. He stared at her, his mind racing back through years he had tried to forget. Daniel. He hadn't heard that name spoken in a long time. Not out loud, not by anyone who stood in front of him. "How do you know that name?" he asked quietly. Lily flinched at the change in his voice. "I didn't mean to cause trouble," she said quickly. I didn't think it could be the same person." "Answer me," he said, not harshly but firmly. She nodded. "Daniel is my brother," she said. "Or he was once." The words hit him like a wave. His brother, the brother he hadn't seen in years, the brother he had walked away from after a fight that had changed everything. The room felt like it was spinning. "What do you mean, was?" he asked. Lily looked down at her hands. "We don't talk anymore," she said. "Not after what happened." He stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the dark land. The memories came rushing back. The last time he had seen Daniel, the angry words, the slammed door, the choice he had made to leave and never look back. "Why are you here?" he asked, his voice low. "I didn't know you were connected to him," Lily said. "I swear I just wanted somewhere quiet. Somewhere away from everything." He turned back to her. Her face was pale, her eyes full of fear and regret. "I didn't run because of him," she said. "Not at first, but when I left I didn't want to hear his name anymore. I didn't want to be part of that story." The rancher sat back down slowly. The past he had buried had just walked into his house, wearing a tired face and carrying a small backpack. "Daniel is the reason I live here," he said after a long pause. Lily looked up, surprised. "I left because of him," he continued. "We both said things we couldn't take back. I thought leaving was easier than fixing it." They looked at each other across the table, two people tied to the same broken thread. "I didn't mean to bring this back into your life," Lily whispered. He shook his head. "Maybe it was always going to come back. I just didn't expect it to look like you." Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the grass and the trees. That night, neither of them slept much. Lily lay in the spare room, staring at the ceiling, thinking about her brother and the man in the next room who carried the same name like a wound. The rancher sat on the edge of his bed, his mind full of old memories and new questions. By morning, everything had changed. The quiet ranch was no longer just a place to hide. It had become a place where the past and the present had finally met. The morning came slowly, like the world itself wasn't sure it wanted to wake up yet. The sky was pale gray, and the air felt cool and heavy with quiet. The rancher stepped outside before the sun fully rose, breathing in the calm that usually helped clear his mind. But this time it didn't work. Daniel's name still echoed in his head. He walked across the land, past the fences and the animals, moving out of habit more than purpose. His hands went through the motions of his daily work, but his thoughts were far away, tangled in memories he had locked away for years. Behind him, Lily stood on the porch watching him from a distance. She didn't call out. She didn't follow. She could tell he needed space, even if she didn't know what to say. After a while, he sat down on a low fence and stared at the open fields. The wide land that had once felt like freedom now felt like a mirror, reflecting everything he had tried to leave behind. Lily finally walked over, her steps slow and careful, like she was approaching something fragile. "I'm sorry," she said softly, stopping a few feet away. "I didn't mean to bring this into your life." He looked up at her. Her face held the same tired sadness he had seen when she first stood at his gate. "You didn't bring it," he said. "It was already there, just buried." She sat down on the grass, hugging her knees to her chest. "I don't even know if my brother is the same person anymore," she said. "The Daniel I grew up with was kind, he looked out for me, but somewhere along the way things changed." He nodded slowly. "The Daniel I knew was stubborn," he said. "Always thought he was right. Always pushing, always fighting, but he also cared more than he ever showed." They sat in silence, sharing the same name, the same memories from two different sides of the same story. After a while, Lily spoke again. "The day everything fell apart," she said, "he told me I should stop running from my problems. He said I needed to face them instead of walking away." The rancher let out a quiet breath. "He told me the same thing," he said, "right before I left." She looked at him, surprised. "What happened between you two?" she asked gently. He stared at the ground, his boot tracing a line in the dirt. "We fought," he said. "About a lot of things, about family, about choices, about who we were supposed to be. I said I didn't want to live the life everyone else expected of me. He said I was being selfish." Lily listened closely. "I told him he didn't understand me," he continued. "He told me I didn't understand him either. We both said things that hurt. And instead of fixing it, I left." Lily nodded slowly. "That sounds like him," she said. "He always wanted people to stay and work things out, even when it was hard." The rancher looked at her. "And you?" he asked. "What did you want?" She thought about it for a moment. "I wanted peace," she said. "I wanted to feel like I had a choice, not just follow a path someone else picked for me." He understood that feeling all too well. They spent the rest of the morning working together, but the mood was different now. It wasn't just quiet, it was thoughtful. Every task seemed to carry a weight, like both of them were thinking about the same person at the same time, even when they didn't say his name. At lunch, they sat under the shade of the same tree they had shared water under days before. The land looked the same, but everything felt changed. "Do you think he's still out there?" Lily asked. The rancher knew who she meant. "I don't know," he said. "I haven't heard from him in years." She picked at the grass, pulling small pieces and letting them fall from her fingers. "I left without telling him where I was going," she admitted. "I was afraid he'd try to stop me, or worse, follow me." He looked at her carefully. "Do you want him to find you?" he asked. She hesitated. "I don't know," she said. "Part of me wants to see him again to tell him I'm okay, but another part of me is scared it'll just turn into another fight." He nodded. "Sometimes seeing someone from your past can open old wounds," he said. "But sometimes it can help them heal." They sat with that thought for a long time. That evening, Lily pulled her backpack closer than usual as they sat on the porch. The sky was painted in soft colors, and the wind carried the smell of grass and dust. "I've been thinking," she said, "about what you said about leaving instead of fixing things." He turned to look at her. "I don't know if running really solved anything," she continued. "It just made the distance bigger." He leaned back against the porch post. "I thought distance would make things easier," he said, "but all it did was make the memories louder." Lily looked down at her bag, then back up at him. "Do you ever think about going back?" she asked. The question sat between them like a stone. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But I wouldn't even know where to start." She took a deep breath. "What if we started together?" she said quietly. He studied her face. There was fear there, but also something else. "Hope." "You mean go find him?" he asked. She nodded. "I don't want to keep running," she said. "And I don't think you want to keep hiding either." He stood up and walked to the edge of the porch, staring out at the land. The ranch had been his safe place, his escape. The idea of leaving it, even for a short time, made his chest feel tight. But the idea of staying, of never facing the past, felt heavy too. That night he couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, listening to the wind move through the trees, thinking about the last time he had seen Daniel's face. Thinking about the words he wished he had said instead of the ones he did. In the spare room, Lily lay awake as well, staring at the ceiling, her mind filled with memories of her brother as a kid, teaching her how to ride a bike, standing up for her when others didn't. By morning, they both looked tired, but something had changed. There was a quiet understanding between them. They sat at the table with their coffee, the steam rising between them. "If we do this," he said, "we do it slowly, carefully." She nodded. "I'm not ready to just show up at his door." "Neither am I," he admitted. They decided to start small. He dug out an old box from the back of a closet, filled with things he hadn't touched in years. Inside were photos, letters, and small items from a life he had left behind. Lily sat beside him as he opened it. He picked up a photo of two young men standing side by side, arms crossed, both trying to look tough but failing. "That's him," he said, pointing. Lily leaned closer, her eyes softening. "He looks like he did back then," she said, "before everything got complicated." They went through the box together, piece by piece, sharing stories. Some were funny, some were sad, some were hard to talk about at all. With every story, the idea of Daniel stopped being a shadow and started becoming a real person again. That afternoon, Lily wrote a short letter. She didn't know where to send it yet, but she wanted to put the words on paper. "I don't know if you'll ever read this," she wrote, "but I want you to know I'm trying to find my way, not run from you." She showed it to the rancher. He read it slowly, then nodded. "That's a good start," he said. He picked up a pen and added a few lines of his own. "I left because I was angry and scared. I don't want to be either of those things anymore." They folded the letter and placed it back in the box. As the sun began to set, they sat on the porch again, watching the sky change colors. The ranch was still quiet, still peaceful, but now it wasn't just a place to hide. It was a place where two people had decided to face the past instead of running from it. And even though they didn't know what would happen next, they both felt something they hadn't felt in a long time. They felt ready. The road stretched out in front of them, long and quiet, just like the land around the ranch. The sun was still low in the sky, painting everything in soft gold. The rancher stood by his truck, checking the tires one last time, while Lily tightened the straps on her backpack. Neither of them said much. Words felt too small for what they were about to do. The rancher looked back at the house, the barn, the fences, and the wide open fields that had been his whole world for so long. This place had given him peace when he needed it most. It had kept him safe from the past. Now, for the first time, he was choosing to leave it behind, even if only for a while. Lily stood beside him, her hands tucked into the sleeves of her jacket. She took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. He nodded. "I don't think I'll ever be sure, but I think it's time." They climbed into the truck and started down the dirt road. The ranch slowly faded behind them, turning into a small shape in the distance before disappearing completely. The drive was quiet at first. The hum of the engine filled the space between them. Lily stared out the window, watching the land change from open fields to small towns and long stretches of road lined with trees. After a while, she spoke. "I used to think going back meant losing," she said. "Like I was giving up." He glanced at her. "What do you think now?" "I think going back might be the bravest thing I've ever done." He smiled slightly. "I feel the same." They stopped at a small cafe along the way, the kind of place where everyone seemed to know each other. They sat at a corner table, sipping warm drinks and sharing a plate of food. Lily laughed when the rancher accidentally spilled a little sugar on the table, and for a moment the tension between them faded. It felt normal. As they got back in the truck, Lily grew quiet again. "He might not want to see me," she said softly. "Or you." The rancher tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "That's a chance we have to take." The town where Daniel lived wasn't big, just a few streets, some small houses, and a park in the center. The rancher's heart beat faster as they drove through, memories popping up at every corner. He parked the truck a short distance away from a small house near the edge of town. "That's it," Lily said, her voice barely above a whisper. They sat there for a moment, neither of them moving. Finally, Lily opened the door and stepped out. The rancher followed. The walk to the front door felt longer than it really was. Every step carried a mix of fear and hope. Lily raised her hand and knocked. They waited, nothing. She knocked again, a little louder this time. The door opened slowly. A man stood there, older than Lily remembered, but still familiar. His hair had a few streaks of gray now, and his face showed lines that spoke of years and worries. When his eyes met Lily's, they widened. "Lily," he said. She nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "Hi, Daniel." He stared at her like he wasn't sure she was real. Then he stepped forward and pulled her into a hug. She froze for just a second before hugging him back. Over Lily's shoulder, Daniel's eyes lifted and met the rancher's. The smile faded. "Is that you?" Daniel asked. The rancher stepped closer. "Yeah, it's me." The air felt heavy between them. Daniel let go of Lily and stood there, looking at his brother. Years of silence, anger, and hurt sat in that one moment. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again," Daniel said. "Neither did I," the rancher replied. There was a long pause, then Daniel stepped aside. "You both better come in." Inside, the house was simple and warm. Photos lined the walls, old family pictures, Lily as a kid, the two brothers when they were younger. They sat at the small kitchen table. No one knew what to say at first. Lily broke the silence. "I left without saying goodbye, I'm sorry." Daniel looked at her. "I was worried sick. I didn't know where you went." She looked down. "I didn't know how to stay." He nodded slowly. "I didn't know how to let you go." The rancher cleared his throat. "I left too, and I never came back. That's on me." Daniel leaned back in his chair. "Yeah. It is." The words weren't angry, just honest. They talked for a long time about the fight, about the things they said, about the things they wished they had said instead. Lily listened, sometimes adding her own memories, her own feelings. Tears were shed. Laughter followed. The weight in the room slowly began to lift. At one point, Daniel stood up and went to a drawer. He pulled out the letter Lily and the rancher had written together. "I got this," he said. "Didn't know who it was from at first, but I think I knew deep down." Lily's eyes widened. "You read it, every word," he said, "more than once." The rancher looked surprised. "Why didn't you write back?" Daniel smiled a little. "I didn't know where to send it." They all laughed softly. That evening they walked to the park as the sun began to set. The sky turned the same soft colors as it did back at the ranch. Lily sat on a swing, pushing herself gently back and forth like she used to as a kid. Daniel watched her, shaking his head. "You never change," she smiled. "Some things shouldn't." The rancher stood a little apart, looking around. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like he was standing between the past and the present. He felt like he was part of both. Later, as they stood by the truck, Lily turned to Daniel. "I don't know where I'm going next," she said, "but I know I don't want to run anymore." Daniel nodded. "You don't have to. You always have a place here." She looked at the rancher. "And you," Daniel added, "you always had a place too. You just forgot." The rancher swallowed hard. "Maybe I did." They hugged, all three of them, under the fading light of the day. The drive back to the ranch felt lighter. Lily leaned her head against the window, a small smile on her face. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" the rancher asked. "For opening the gate that day," he smiled. "For reminding me why I built it in the first place." When they arrived, the ranch welcomed them back with its familiar quiet. The stars filled the sky, and the wind moved gently through the grass. They stood together on the porch, looking out at the open land. Lily took a deep breath. "I think I want to stay here for a while, if that's okay." He nodded. "You're always welcome." The ranch wasn't just a place to hide anymore. It was a place to grow, to heal, to begin again. As the night settled in, they both felt something warm and steady inside. Not the feeling of running away, but the feeling of finally coming home.